Level 1. You are 10 years old when you learn that fixing a problem and being valued for it are not the same thing. The estate greenhouse is overheating during the hottest week of summer. Rare orchids are beginning to fold, and the maintenance team your father called will not arrive for hours. The gardener, Mr. Bell, tells you to stay out of the way. Your father has approved replacing anything that dies. But you notice one cooling pipe is dry while the others are dripping. You can go back to the house as ordered, or help the only person still trying to save the plants. You kneel beside Mr. Bell, follow the dry pipe to its intake, and point out a mat of leaves packed against the filter. He shuts the valve, removes the cover, and lets you pull the wet leaves free with a pair of gloves. Water rushes through the pipe again. By sunset, the orchids have lifted. At dinner, Adrian sits beside your father. You sit near the far end, beside the chair reserved for guests. Your father asks Adrian what he learned from his tutor about markets. Adrian repeats the answer perfectly, and your father smiles. You tell him what happened in the greenhouse. For 1 second, you expect him to ask how you found the blockage. Instead, he says, "We could have bought new plants." That becomes the first rule of your childhood. Adrian is praised for understanding valuable things. You are criticized for caring about damaged ones. When investors visit, your father lets Adrian listen outside the study. You are sent upstairs. One night, you stop halfway up the staircase. You can obey or finally hear what your father is teaching the son he chose. You take off your shoes and return to the study door. Inside, your father is discussing 2 properties, a new luxury resort and an old hotel that has lost money for 9 years. "Give the good one to Adrian when he graduates," he says. The executive asks what should happen to the broken hotel. You lean closer. "Save that one for Daniel." You return upstairs before anyone sees you. But from that night on, whenever something breaks inside the Vale family, you wonder whether your father has already put your name on it. Level 2. At 18, you and 2 classmates build a low-cost irrigation controller for a national engineering competition. Cheap sensors, simple valves, and parts small farms can repair themselves. It wins. A respected engineering program offers you a scholarship without your father making a call. For the first time, you own a future without the Vale name. Your father reads the letter and says the university probably wants a donation. You decide to go anyway. 3 weeks before you leave, Adrian drives through the estate gate after drinking. No one is seriously injured. The camera records the car, not the driver. A photographer captures only the wreck and the family crest. Inside the library, your father explains that Adrian is leading the family's largest takeover. A charge could collapse the deal, erase hundreds of jobs, and end his path to the chairmanship. The damage would be smaller if you were driving. You have no board seat, no official title, and no reputation the family needs to protect. Your scholarship will probably disappear. Adrian's future will not. This family survives because each of us knows what we are worth to it, your father says. You can protect the first future you built for yourself, or sacrifice it for the chance to matter to him. You sign the statement and take the keys. The next morning, your photograph is everywhere. Reckless billionaire son crashes family car. The university withdraws its offer. Claire, your 14-year-old sister, tells you she saw Adrian climb out of the driver's side. She writes down everything she remembers and wants to give the statement to the police. You make her fold it away and stay quiet. It is the first time you teach her the family rule you hate. Silence protects the person above you. Adrian visits 2 days later. You wait for thanks. He tells you to be more careful next time. 4 years pass. At 22, you have no degree, no place at headquarters, and a public identity built from someone else's crime. Then your father offers you your first position, general manager of the Beaumont Hotel. Someone at the table laughs. The Beaumont is the same broken property you heard about as a child. Its roof leaks, its lenders want out, and 3 managers have resigned in 3 years. Your father gives you 60 days to stop the losses. You can refuse and preserve the last pieces of your pride. Instead, you accept. Not because the hotel will earn his love, because you need to know whether he was right about you. By your first night at the Beaumont, you understand why 3 managers ran. Level 3. The lobby looks expensive from a distance. Up close, the marble is cracked, the brass is painted plastic, and rainwater drips into a champagne bucket. The hotel manager, Marcus Hale, shows you an occupancy report claiming 82%. That night, most of the windows are dark. Marcus offers you the owner's suite and promises to explain the numbers in the morning. You stay at the front desk instead. 6 guests check in while the system records 41 occupied rooms. A floor listed as full contains untouched beds behind every door. Night auditor Elena Ruiz shows you invoices for food never delivered, linen never used, and maintenance companies tied to Marcus's family. The hotel is not failing. It is being emptied. Adrian tells you not to accuse senior employees. He says the Beaumont exists to keep certain partners happy. But you do not want a careful investigation. You want one fast victory big enough to force your father to notice. So you announce a luxury relaunch and assume the Vale name will fill the building. Almost nobody comes. A critic photographs the leaking ceiling. Adrian sends the article to the board with one sentence. Daniel has made the Beaumont visible again. You pack a suitcase before midnight. Elena places the handwritten night ledger on top of it, the record employees kept because they stopped trusting the official system. If you leave, she says, Marcus wins twice. You can return home and confirm what everyone believes, or stay long enough to become responsible for what happens next. You unpack. For 3 weeks, you match rooms, keys, invoices, and deliveries. When Marcus tries to remove the files, you fire him in the lobby before he can call Adrian. Then you work inside the hotel. You carry towels, answer guests at 2 in the morning, and listen to workers blamed for theft committed above them. Elena notices airport crews are being housed across the city. You choose steady airline contracts over glamorous guests, turn an unused restaurant into a crew lounge, and sell 3 display cars from the lobby to repair the roof. The board calls the plan cheap. The rooms fill anyway. Within the 60 days your father gave you, the false invoices stop, and the weekly losses fall by more than half. 18 months after you arrive, the Beaumont posts its first real profit in 9 years. The staff gathers in the lobby. For a few minutes, they see the man who stayed, not the reckless son from the newspapers. You promote Elena from night auditor to finance director because she kept the only honest books in the building. Then you take the report home yourself. At the board meeting, Adrian presents the recovery as a headquarters strategy. Your audit and contracts sit in the appendix. His name is on the final slide. Your father sees you through the glass wall. He knows. He says nothing. You enter his office, ready to resign from the family. Before you can speak, he slides a factory file toward you. You ask whether saving the Beaumont changed anything. Yes, he says. Now I know you can handle something worse. Level 4. At 25, 2.5 years after you first entered the Beaumont, you arrive at the Greyhaven factory with a different kind of problem. At the Beaumont, people hid the truth. At Greyhaven, everyone knows it. The machinery is unsafe, the contracts are disappearing, and headquarters expects the workers to absorb the risk. On your 3rd day, a chemical alarm sounds above the finishing line. Restarting production may expose 200 workers. Keeping it closed will break a $12 million contract and may shut the factory permanently. The workers wait to see what the billionaire's disgraced son values more, their lungs or their wages. You stop the line. Headquarters orders you to restart. You refuse in writing, putting your own name beneath the decision. 6 hours later, the ventilation system fails inspection. No one is hurt, but the customer cancels, and Adrian tells the press that local management overreacted. You saved the workers and endangered the business that pays them. The union expects you to close the plant. The board expects you to reopen it quietly. You choose a 3rd option. You release the safety report, give the union seats in the repair meetings, and put 2 written choices before the board. Sell unused land to replace the ventilation system, or keep the plant closed. With workers and inspectors watching, the board approves the sale. The workers accept flexible shifts while you pursue smaller contracts Adrian once dismissed. The first 6 months are worse, until 5 smaller customers replace the one you lost. The plant stabilizes 18 months later, not because you found one clever trick, but because the people inside it stopped expecting management to lie. At the reopening, The union leader hands you the red emergency stop key that once hung beside the failed line. "Keep it," she says, so the next man remembers he is allowed to use it. Your father offers you another failing company. You do not accept immediately. You demand authority over staff, contracts, safety, and cash before your name touches it. He agrees, because he now needs your results more than your obedience. While the lawyers prepare the new authority, you read every page instead of signing where they point. One schedule lists the Beaumont and Greyhaven beneath a company called Arbor Holdings. At the bottom is a succession clause. Control transfers to Daniel Vale on his 35th birthday. You photograph the page before your father closes the file. "Something Adrian does not need to know about," he says. An outside lawyer confirms that Arbor owns both companies, an independent trust controls the shares, and the transfer date is fixed. The trust's purpose remains sealed. For the first time, the broken companies do not look like punishments. They look like pieces of a plan you are still not allowed to see. Level 5. At 29, after using your new authority on 2 smaller rescues, you are sent to a housing project where 800 families have already paid deposits. Before opening the board packet, you tell Claire to arrange a meeting with the buyers. The towers are half built, costs have risen. The board wants to cancel the affordable units, refund what it can, and use the waterfront land for luxury apartments. Adrian promises to support the permanent board seat you have been denied your entire life if you sign the cancellation. Claire, now working for the Family Foundation, is assigned to manage the angry buyers after the announcement. One family shows you what cancellation means. You walk through an unfinished apartment with a couple who have spent 7 years saving for it. Their daughter has already chosen the corner where her bed will go. The numbers say the board's plan is cleaner. The people standing inside the concrete shell make it feel like theft. You can finally enter headquarters as a success or protect a promise the family finds inconvenient. You refuse the seat. Using the authority you demanded after Greyhaven, you propose selling the waterfront parcel, reducing the luxury section, and finishing the promised homes at a smaller profit. At the emergency project meeting, your father sits at the head of the table while Adrian tries to block the sale. This time, the project's attorney tells him he cannot. The land belongs to Arbor Holdings, not the Vale Group. You make the attorney read the controlling clauses aloud in front of your father and Adrian. Your father created Arbor on your 18th birthday and placed every later company inside it. You were named operating successor with full control at 35. Until then, the trust gives you project authority, and one rule Adrian cannot override. Arbor cannot guarantee Vale Group debt. The trustee must enforce the firewall. That is why your company survived every reckless expansion at headquarters. You sign the sale authorization while Adrian watches. Then you look at your father. Why me? He answers only part of it. Because Adrian never looks twice at something he thinks is beneath him. It explains why the assets were hidden. It does not explain why your life had to be hidden with them. The secret is over. The trust prevents Adrian from taking Arbor, so he starts watching it while you start fortifying it. The sale goes through. 20 months later, the first families receive their keys. Claire watches a mother carry her child across a doorway the board wanted to erase. When you were 18, Claire stayed silent because you told her to. Now she makes a different choice. She asks to leave the foundation and work with you inside Arbor. You say yes, but only if she starts in operations, with no family title and no protected office. For the next 4 years, you connect the companies, build cash reserves, require independent audits, and make Elena approve every major transfer. You still do not control Arbor, but you make sure control will mean something when it arrives. On your 35th birthday, the independent trustee calls before your family does. "Mr. Vale," she says, "control of Arbor transferred to you at midnight." Then she adds, "There is a problem in the transfer audit now sitting in your name." Level 6. Your first act in control is to freeze every new commitment in Arbor's name until Elena and outside counsel verify it. The transfer audit shows no mortgage on your companies. Adrian was never able to do that. It shows something simpler and more dangerous. Arbor paid headquarters a fixed fee for shared services. Adrian told lenders that money was guaranteed forever, then forged approvals claiming you had promised more after taking control. He borrowed against money Arbor never agreed to send. 2 banks have noticed the contradictions. An inquiry has been open for months, and your audit contains the missing proof. You can take the report to Adrian privately and give the family time to replace the loans. Or send it to the lenders and expose the fraud before he signs another agreement in your name. You summon Adrian and your father to Arbor's office, not the estate and not headquarters. Adrian arrives expecting negotiation. Your father arrives knowing the room no longer belongs to him. You place the forged approvals on the table. Adrian calls them temporary paperwork. He says every family business moves money where the group needs it. Your father tells you to contain the damage first and assign blame later. That sentence sounds exactly like the night of the crash. You send the audit to the lenders while both men watch, then revoke every Veil Group user from Arbor's accounts. The banks freeze Adrian's new financing. 3 days later, investigators use your audit to connect his forged approvals to the contradictory loan filings they have been examining for months. Federal agents arrest him at headquarters. Claire has gone there to identify the original ledgers investigators requested. She calls from across the street as they lead him outside. Adrian sees her holding the phone. "You did this," he says. "No," you answer. "I stopped hiding it." The fraud case freezes the Veil Group's remaining credit. Without new money, it will miss payroll within days. The board that never gave you a seat arrives at Arbor asking for rescue. You authorize only a 14-day payroll bridge, paid directly to employees and essential suppliers. Not $1 can touch executive bonuses, private aircraft, or the estate. It keeps thousands of people from becoming collateral, while you decide what happens to the company itself. Your attorney presents 2 permanent paths. Merge Arbor into the Veil Group, and the old debt may swallow the clean businesses. Use controlled bankruptcy, and Arbor can buy only what deserves to survive, but every hidden loan will be exposed. Claire places the witness statement she wrote at 14 beside the 2 plans. "If we save the name first," she says, "we do it again. We protect the person above us and send the cost downward." You refuse the merger. But before you sign the bankruptcy plan, you turn to your father. "I know how Arbor worked," you say. "I still do not know why you needed me to believe I was worthless." Your father unlocks a case he has kept with the trust records. Inside are the original Arbor deed, old board warnings about Adrian's borrowing, and a letter updated after every company you repaired. The first sentence says, "You were never the son I expected to fail." The second says, "You were the son I could afford to sacrifice." This time, your father cannot hide behind a closed door. You make him explain it before you decide what survives him. Level 7. Your father slides the old board warnings across the table. Years before Greyhaven, he warned that Adrian was building growth on debt. The board ignored him while profits rose, and investors treated Adrian as the future. Removing Adrian then would have split the company before any safe alternative existed. So your father built one. He had noticed the difference before either son was old enough to work. Adrian reached for whatever already looked valuable. You stayed beside a gardener until water moved again. The Arbor deed shows separate accounts, no cross guarantees, an independent trustee, and automatic transfer at 35. The companies were never available to cover Adrian's debts. That was the shield. Then you point to your name on every operating appointment and every failure report. And if I failed? Then the companies failed, the trust lost its value, and your future disappeared with them, he says. He had protected the assets from Adrian by placing their operating future around the son no one watched. You ask why he never told you the truth. Because Adrian had to believe you were harmless. You let him steal the Beaumont. Yes. You let me lose the scholarship. Your father looks at Claire's witness statement. Yes. You could have hidden the companies without teaching me I deserved nothing. He has no document for that answer. Only the sentence he has always believed. You became the man who could save them. And you decided the man mattered less than the result. You tell your attorney to remove every clause that could return your father to control. The room goes quiet. The letter's final instruction reads, Arbor exists for one purpose. If the Veil Group fails, save the family by choosing what survives. Your father expects the plan to justify the damage. It does not. But the employees waiting for payroll did not create that damage, and the families waiting for homes should not inherit it. You sign the controlled bankruptcy plan. Arbor will buy the viable companies through the court. Wages and customer deposits come first. Private assets are sold before workers lose their livelihoods. Investigators receive every record. Every director who approved Adrian's false documents is removed. Adrian receives lawyers, not protection. Your father loses his chair. The chairman says your decision will destroy the Vale family. No, you say. It destroys the rule that the family name matters more than the people carrying it. 3 months later, the Vale Group sign comes down. The Beaumont stays open. Greyhaven signs its largest contract in 20 years. The housing families keep the homes the board once tried to erase. Elena becomes chief operating officer because she challenged you before she ever trusted you. Claire gives investigators the witness statement she kept for 17 years and tells the truth about the night you taught her to remain silent. Adrian asks you to tell the court that your father forced every decision on him. You refuse to lie for him the way you did at 18. Months later, your father visits Arbor's new office and looks for his oversized chair. It is gone. He asks whether you finally understand why he chose you. Yes, you say. Understanding is not forgiveness. Spare, Scapegoat, Exile, Fixer, Successor, Heir. Every rank before this one was assigned by someone above you. The final rank is the first you choose for yourself. You do not become the favorite son. You become the man who ends the need for one.